What's up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Lab, special edition, I guess, of the MLB Series previews that we're starting to do. For those who are new here, we're going to be doing these twice a week, most weeks, talking about the series that start up on, in this case, Monday and then into Tuesday. And then for the weekend series, some of those start up on Thursday, depending on the crop that we have. We're going to get into those, but also, the series that are starting up Friday going into the weekend. So we'll talk about all of these series, not just the five that you see on the screen, but all 15 because we got all the teams in action. So I'm excited to get into that for this week. I do like the slate of series that we have starting up, today and tomorrow. Probably more so the ones starting up today. But yeah, can talk a little bit about last week or last weekend. Had some good, some bad. Really, nothing stood out. If you haven't caught up or caught on to it now, pretty much the POD of the MLB Series Preview episode is going to be whatever ends up being on the graphic. And last weekend, it was a Gallon Masterclass, unfortunately, but fortunately for the Goat Whale. He hit all of his prize pick squares, all of his props, pretty much everything, but gave up a couple runs at the end, and the bullpen really finished it off there. So no D-backs ML cash, which was a little unfortunate, but I still feel like that was a pretty good read on Gallon. Got a lot of cash from him there, which was good. Kind of same thing with Gosman, except he hit less of his squares and props. He pitched well throughout the game, gave up a couple at the end, and the bullpen kind of blew the lead against the Rays with the DeLuca home run, so he didn't get the win, which was kind of pissed. But all in all, I mean, nothing special, nothing terrible. So I didn't like those Crop series nearly as much as I did the one earlier in the week, and I feel like it's the same at least for the beginning of the series this week. Because I do like some angles for these series, particularly the games that are going to be starting up today and maybe tomorrow. So the front half of these series. So pretty excited to get into some of these. We can just hop on right into it. By the time I guess this comes out, or you'll see this on YouTube, the White Sox Blue Jays series will already be underway. I don't really know why there's a 2 p.m. game. Maybe enlighten me in the comments if anybody knows. But we're getting Eric Fetty against Jose Barrios for game one, which is already underway, so I won't spend too much time there. I don't like too much in this series, I'll say this, but Garrett Crochet against the Blue Jays kind of intrigues me. I know they've started tampering with their lineup a little bit lately, where David Schneider's hitting the leadoff spot. Now they're getting Justin Turner back, which is, again, those are two huge bats in that lineup against lefties. That lineup's already good against lefties, and they already make it really tough. And against these like power pitchers who really need to generate strikeouts, that's where they kind of show themselves. So I do think that's a little tough of a matchup for him. I think I'm going to be targeting the Jays in some way in game two. But other than that, not too much interest in this series for me. Similar to what I thought about the Yankees against the White Sox, I kind of wanted to see one through the hoop with the Yankees just to make sure they weren't coming out flat in the series because you were buying out at kind of a high point. And then I said, as long as they get that first one through the hoop, I think they blow through the rest of them in that series. I think the same kind of applies here for the Blue Jays. Couple fluky losses, let's call it, against the Rays in game one and game two. Not that they deserve to win the first game with Tyler Alexander, taking a perfect game into the eighth, but they started to come back in that game. And really with what happened in the back end of the bullpen, they probably should have won that game. But in game two, the Gosman blow up, legacy, the Luca home run in the, I think it was the top of the eighth. So two very winnable games for them that they didn't win. Then Manoah came back and pitched well against the Rays, got one that he needed, and the Rays kind of felt coming. So all that to say, I think this is probably a get-right series for them. Eric Fetty's been good, though. So, again, this is going underway, but I have no idea because it hasn't started at the time I'm talking about this. So we'll see how he comes out. But that Crochet game really interests me in the Jays bats, I guess you could say. We can skip to the next series, Mets Cleveland. So for those of you who tuned into BTL today, I think you know my feelings on this game, the one that starts today with Trevor Megill and Ben Lively pitching. I like runs in this game. We talked about specifically like the Guardians in their stadium in Progressive Field. They made some tinkers to like the back wall to where it makes like a wind tunnel if there's wind going in and out now. So a lot of these games that are inching up on like the higher end of the totals that you're going to see there, I like to get involved. And for this game specifically in game one, you're going to get a little bit of wind in to start, but it looks like throughout the game, it's going to kind of shift its way outward, which I've seen a couple of times now and thought to myself, maybe if it's kind of split down the middle and you see when on the back end, it doesn't really matter. It has, and there's been a big effect to it. Um, so that's not the only part. I can show you here what I like specifically in this game because I do think the Guardians win, but I think there's going to be runs more so. Can show you here what we have with the Guardians. If you're looking at these games at home, really, there hasn't been a single 9 total for the Guardians in Cleveland to start the season. So I mean, we're young in the season, but the highest they've seen is 8.5. Now you're seeing some 9, still some like juicy 8.5s out there. So get what you can get, but I feel like that 9 is very, very telling. And like I said, I do think the Guardians win this game. But I'm more so leaning on the total, and I think you're going to have to win this game by scoring. Part of it is because if we're talking about the wind tunnel, effect, I guess you could say, on a lot of these pitchers and a lot of these hitters. You have a guy in Ben Lively who's been, pretty good to start the season. Can't really fault him for that. 3 ERA. He's been everything they needed from like a back end type starter. He does not keep the ball on the ground very well. He has one of the lowest ground ball rates out of all the qualified starting pitchers in the MLB. And he throws a lot of fastballs. I can get the exact number down here, but yeah, a lot of sinker, a lot of four seam. That's 58-ish% or 56-ish% fastballs. So he throws a lot of them. So for a guy who is going to give up plenty of fly balls, frankly, against those against those fastballs, that worries me, and that's an area I think the Mets can exploit. But again, on the other side, you have Tyler Migo, who's coming back off of an injury. I believe this is his first start back. I'm not very high on him in this spot either. I mean, he hasn't been great, especially on the road. I don't know if you can see it here, but terrible road splits. And last year, he was god awful. I think above a 6 ERA on the road. You can really see the difference there. But he's facing a Guardians team who is going to make life tough because they don't strike out. I think they found a little something with Tyler Freeman there hitting at the leadoff spot too. So everything's kind of meshing at the right time for this matchup. And I do think that 9 total is pretty indicative of what we're going to get from this game. So I like runs in this first game. I'll be taking the over 8.5, over 9. I have over 9 for plus money. I think this game either soars or, soars one way or another. So give me runs there. Absolutely. But after that, I'm not so sure what I'm going to do with the rest of the 2 games or the other 2 games because if there's wind, more of it, maybe it's stronger going out. I'm going to have to get re-involve myself in the same ways that I am now. Hauser and Carrasco, it's a gas can matchup that I would love to get involved in if that's the case. Quintana McKenzie, maybe a little less so because you have a lefty, pitching against the Guardians lineup, which makes their lineup a little different. So I'll have to see exactly what they roll out. But Tristan McKenzie, fading him against the Mets, I don't really have a problem with either. I still think him coming back to pitch with that torn ligament in his elbow was not the best idea. We're starting to see him pitch, a tad better in the last couple starts, I guess you could say. But other than that, not a guy that I'm high on for the duration of this season. So yeah, heavy emphasis on game 1 for me on the over here between Meagle and Lively. And then we'll see if there's wind involved with the rest of the 2 games. I'll gladly get involved there as well. Next series we have up, Brewers and Marlins. The Marlins are, coming off just a weird couple series. They've started to play like a little better baseball. I guess the lineup is still wildly inconsistent, which makes it all the more difficult. But coming into this series, I mean, for anybody who saw Skip Schumacher's comments on Sixto Sanchez, I mean, he's calling a guy out for just being terrible, especially early in the games, which was kind of the premise of his whole little rant there. I'm kind of thinking that sparks a little bit in the team, and seeing a short line here to start the series against the Brewers is definitely making me think that there's maybe a little something going on, and maybe they ride this hot streak a little bit. The bats got hot in a way that I didn't think was going to happen against the Mets pitching in that series. So that could be the difference for them. They need a little spark. Maybe they got it. Joe Ross is pitching in game 1, a guy who I'm trying to think of some comparisons for the last couple years, but we've seen a bunch of guys for the Brewers, especially for a couple other teams that, they're these veterans who've come back and look good in short sample sizes. And then everything kind of starts to fall apart. I feel like that's going to happen for Joe Ross here at some point, whether now is the time or not. I couldn't really tell you, but in this spot against the Marlins, I have some hope. Everything hasn't been going smooth sailing exactly for Joe Ross. He's pitched to a 4.61 ERA, but for the Brewers pitching staff who, they've needed a guy who could eat some innings. They need a guy who at least you would see flashes of, a little bit of consistency for them. Like he's been all right. He's come out last couple starts, 5 innings, 2 runs, 5 innings, 3 runs, 6 innings, 1 run. It's really outside of the blowups against the Yankees and Padres, which at the very least the Yankees one is excusable. He's been pretty solid for them. So against the Marlins now, who I would not bother targeting them against a lefty, you have a righty on mound. Could very well be the time. So I'm kind of thinking this might be it. I wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of stay hot with the bats and sneak one here. Like I said, I don't care to target them against a lefty, and you have that going. Second game of the series. So I'm good there. Robert Gasser is wildly, I don't know, he's had an inconsistent start to his MLB career, to say the least. If you watched like his stuff over the first course of, the 2 starts he's had, it was lights out against the Cardinals. Then, you limited the damage against the Pirates, but the velo was a little down. The, command of the strike zone was not quite the same as we saw in this start. So I'm interested to see how he bounced back. But again, it's a lefty against the Marlins. So not real interest for me there. And then I also talked about fading Freddie Peralta last episode, which ended up being the squad ride on Friday, which is fantastic. The Astros hit him up a little bit. Freddie Peralta against teams that don't really strike out much against right-handed pitching. He's not the same, not nearly as effective. And I do have to say about the Marlins, them and the White Sox are kind of in the same boat where their offenses are so poor, but people don't realize they actually don't strike out all that much against right-handed pitching. Can check out exactly what the number is as of late. Can pull that up right here. Yeah, so they're kind of middle of the pack, 12th least or 12th lowest strikeout rate against right-handed pitching in the month of May. So you would think with an offense that bad, they'd be hanging out more with the Mariners and Reds here near the 25, 27 range, but they're not. So I do think they can make life tough for Freddie Peralta, but I don't know if that'll ultimately amount to runs, which if it was an offense like the Astros, who are starting to hit a little better right now, sneakily, people are not talking about it enough, I would be more inclined to get involved. So sneaky kind of Marlins angle for me there too. If you also want to talk about the bullpens, can pull that up here. The Marlins bullpen, the one issue with them is, first of all, they're bad, but also pretty much the whole bullpen, literally the whole bullpen's gone the last 2 days. Good amount of pitches, good amount of mileage on them too. Some of them pitched 2 days in a row if you include Nardi. Maldonado went Friday, Saturday. So they're kind of in shambles right now. So I'm not 100% how I want to get involved in this game in game one. To be honest with you, that might be a game time decision, but I do think the Marlins bats are going to be a little sneaky against Joe Ross. And if you don't have the plums to go with that, I think the over is a very viable play here too, with the status of this Marlins bullpen, which, like I said, is already bad. Then when you add a tough rest situation into that, it makes it that much worse. So yeah, give me Marlins to be scrappy in game one. We'll see how they come out. And, Peralta Luzardo, that'd be a great matchup too. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that series. Now we have the Twins Nationals, which is another one where I guess my thoughts more so lean to the game that's starting up today in game one. I think Pablo Lopez is in for a sneaky spot where this is kind of the expected bounce back start for him, right? Because he's coming off that start against the Yankees, which again, like having a tough start against the Yankees is extremely excusable because that offense is firing on all cylinders right now. Really, I mean, they stuffed the Twins pitching staff in a locker that entire series. The offense didn't help, obviously, either because they didn't score any runs. But Pablo Lopez in that start against the Yankees, I mean, he gave up 10 hits, which Pablo Lopez, as good as he's been, really the entirety of the season so far, 10 hits was a lot. And it came specifically like in the front end of the start. You see what they did on him early in the start. You had the Judge home run in the first. You had a slew of base hits come out of the second inning from the bottom of that lineup. And then really he settled down kind of in the back half of this start. So it was honestly pretty impressive that he fought for 6 1/3 and still kind of maintained the 3 earned runs. So kudos to him for that, for fighting through the back end of that start. But yeah, they roughed him up a little bit. But this seems like now he would go back to business as usual, going to DC, facing a Nats team that's not really playing fantastic baseball right now. But I sneakily think this is a good spot for the Nats offense, which I'm not trying to back all that much because I don't want to get sharp with them just for the sake of getting sharp. But I'll show you this. I don't know if we can see this directly, but if we're talking about what he throws to a lot of these lefties, I guess you can see it like a little bit in the Yankee start, at least on the ones that were put in play. Um, Oswaldo Cabrera, like a changeup, sweeper to Juan Soto, Verdugo changeup, Rizzo changeup. So, I mean, this is just a glimpse. I could show you more, but it would take a lot longer to get there. The premise of it is he throws a lot of off speed to lefties. That's how he loves to attack them. And when I look at the Nationals lineup, I guess I can go here just to straight leaderboards. Um, a lot of the guys who I would trust to score runs for the lineup, or like I look at the Nationals and say, if they're going to score runs, who's going to have to be the guys? There are a lot of the lefties, and it would mainly be, CJ Abrams, Eddie Rosario, who's hitting, he's been red hot over the past couple weeks. Jesse Winker, Joey Gallo's back in the lineup. Maybe he gets a straight home run. Luis Garcia, kind of same deal. So a lot of these guys, if you go to like, I don't know, you can go to change up just for shits and giggles. Look at that. Eddie Rosario, Jesse Winker, Luis Garcia, great off-speed hitters. CJ Abrams, which actually, like if you look at his numbers just as a baseline, like he's a really good fastball hitter. That's his best pitch by far. Like his numbers against breaking balls are not bad. They're just not nearly as good as the fastball. But if you also look at what he's done, like the slew of his base hits as of recently, like you got a fastball single there, slider, you got a curveball from Zach Wheeler, which he's been really good, just kind of sitting on these pitches. Here,
Down the right field
yeah, he's
line.
just
That's
been
going to
great at
be
kind
a
of sitting on these
popular
pitches and
man
taking
in
them
BC,
exactly,
boy.
wherever he sends them.
down the
Just a
right
great
field
swing,
line.
great
That's
piece
going to
of
be in
hitting
for a
there.
base
So
hit. It's going to be extra
stuff like
bases.
that is
Abram
kind of what I expect from this Nats lineup, and can go back to the full team here. Jesse Winker, if you look at his just individual pitch mix stuff, just not a great fastball hitter, but sliders he's been killing, changeups, curveballs, really all the off-speed stuff he's been great against. That goes the same for a lot of these guys. So I won't go through all of them individually, but all that to say, Pablo Lopez is going to attack these guys with off-speed. I think he's in for a little bit of trouble against this Nationals lineup, and I am looking at a 20-cent line move to the Nationals in this game one, which you do have Mitchell Parker in a lower total game on the other side, and he's been fantastic too. If we can talk about that side of it, the Twins have not really been good against left-handed pitching as of recent. That is their better split, has been for the entire season. But if we look at what they've done in the month of May, really, they're sitting down here 22nd with an 80 WRC plus. A little shorter or smaller of a sample size than the rest of these teams. I get that, but they're not patient. They're not walking. They've been overly aggressive, and it hasn't really been paying off. So um, I think this is a really interesting spot that, may get overlooked because you just look at the Nationals Twins game and you're like, those are two teams that I don't want to get involved with. The Twins, after that crazy win streak, they've been sliding. It's got to stop at some point. I don't know if it does just yet. I do think, too, I can go to the series price because I can only assume that it's pretty juicy in favor of the Twins. You would expect nothing less, but I wouldn't hate a play on the series here for the Nationals because if they do get this first game, I think you open a can of worms pretty much. I don't love the Joe Ryan Patrick Corbin matchup. I'll be honest with you there, but we talk about Simeon Woods Richardson against Jake Irvin, who's been really good here too. We have the Nationals sitting at plus 185. Like I think that would be a great value bet if they do get game one. I'm not going to play this myself because I do like just the game one spot better, but another sneaky spot I would not hate targeting them one of those two games, probably game three later in the series. If they do end up getting this game 1-2, maybe they take the series. Can go back here. Last one on this graphic will be Red Sox Rays. We're getting Tanner Houck against Taj Bradley and Cooper Criswell versus Zach Littell. Two of the same pitching matchups we got in Boston, in Fenway. I talked about that series when it happened last week. I like some unders in that series. I targeted specifically the Houck Bradley matchup there, which is the one that's going to be starting off this series in the Trop. So I talked about this. I mean, I always talk about this, but I hate going to back the same things that just happened in a pitching matchup when these lineups are seeing the same pitching matchups for the second time within a week, which is exactly what we're getting from these first two matchups. I will say, though, it's a little different, especially with the Houck Bradley matchup in game one. And part of that is because of the way those starts specifically went, because that under, uh, I guess that one and the Cutter Crawford one, and before that in game one, really had no business hitting because we had a flurry of offense early in the game. Then the pitchers on both sides really settled down later in the game, and there was a halt of offense. So, they hit them well early, and then the pitchers kind of made some adjustments. Tanner Houck, I guess, more so made some. So I do think that can carry over. I believe now we're seeing a 7 total in the Trop, which haven't seen big moves like that all too much, especially when the offense has been hitting a little better for the Rays as of the last couple weeks. So it's the one rare time where I wouldn't mind just going back to an under here, but I don't have the stomach to do it because, again, that's like one of my cardinal rules. I don't do that when betting baseball. But I also wouldn't be surprised if you want to take the opposite angle on a side there. If Tanner Houck pitches a little better than Taj Bradley in this matchup, because he seemed to be the one that made more adjustments, and Taj Bradley just kind of figured out location of his stuff and made command a little better throughout the start. So Tanner Houck, slight lean to the Red Sox side for me in game one. The rest of the series is kind of tough. I will say for Brian Bayo, I did talk about this in last weekend Sharp Report. I mean, he's been bad against lefties his whole career. It looked like he was starting to turn a corner a little bit. Didn't happen against the Cardinals. He was bad, which kind of set the tone for the entire series. He gave up some nukes to a couple lefties there, I believe. So you can guarantee the Rays are going to put every lefty they have in the lineup. And while they don't have too many, I do think they have ones that can give him problems, like Josh Lowe, Richie Palacio has been really good. You're probably going to see Ben Rortvedt behind the dish, which he's been clutch for them when needed. So those guys, I think, give him problems. So I'll probably be targeting the Rays in some way. They're big time, teams that just love to pick on these pitchers with really aggressive splits. And, Brian Bayo seems to be one of them. So lean Red Sox game one, probably lean Rays bats game three, but overall, not my favorite series to get involved in because it's a repeat of what we just saw. Next one that we can bring up, and I'll switch the graphic real quick. You can go to the next set of them, and the favorite of, I think, a lot of people that they wanted me to talk about was this Mariners-Yankees series, which is going to be a fantastic series. Started off, we get Logan Gilbert versus Marcus Stroman. Really good pitching matchup, and I'll be excited to watch that tonight. Then we get Bryan Woo versus Clark Schmidt. Then we get Bryce Miller, Nestor Cortez, and then you finish it off with Luis Castillo against Luis Gil. So I would say, again, another one of these series. I like the back half probably a little more than the front half a little more than the back half. We can start with today. I do kind of think that Marcus Stroman has a little bit tough of a time today. And you could say the strikeouts are going to be there, which when Marcus Stroman's able to strike guys out, it's so much better for him because, he's a guy who nibbles around the corners. If you're going to get guys to bite, get teams to bite on the outside, they're not going to make hard contact. The thing with this matchup specifically, and I can show you Marcus Stroman real quickly. The thing that I can't keep going back to is his struggles against lefties. And when you look at this Mariners lineup, there's not a ton of them in there that really scare you, but I think a couple of them have really good matchups to the point where I can't get myself away from it. So when I look at what he's done against lefties, he's really been struggling, and he's been giving up a lot of power to these lineups as well. So when I think about the main guys in the lineup, which maybe this isn't the best power option necessarily, but when we talk about a guy who I used to target against sinker slider pitchers all the time, and he's starting to hit better, Josh Rojas is going to be leading off at the top of that lineup. And then you have Big Country, Cal Raleigh, who's going to get to use that short porch because this game's been playing in Yankee Stadium. Then you got Don Canzone, who I believe is back in the lineup, and he can provide a little bit of pop, at the back end or middle half of that lineup. So I see, 253 compared to 229 against, for lefties compared to righties. A lot more power. Obviously, more run production has come from the lefties against him. Their slugging difference is definitely something to make note of when you're playing Yankee Stadium against those righties or against those lefties. They're going to use the right field fence. So I do think this is a sneaky spot for the Mariners bats to come alive, maybe get a, not pepper them with consistent offense all throughout the outing, but somebody hits a big blast that kind of sets the tone or puts them ahead early in the game, which Not to say Logan Gilbert isn't liable for that too, but I do like attacking Marcus Stroman maybe a little more in this matchup. So I do lean Mariners. I'll probably be on them in some form or fashion in game one. But this is probably my favorite angle, probably going to end up in the graphic of, the series that are starting up this week. I want to fade Bryan Woo going up against this Yankees lineup, which, I mean, to be honest, if you're talking about fading a pitcher against this Yankees lineup, really at any point in the past month, I guess you could even say all season, he hasn't pitched any ass really too much because they're absolutely on fire right now. But Bryan Woo, he's come back. He's been on a little bit of a pitch limit. I believe in that A start, like he was solid, 4 1/3, only gave up 1 hit, 3 strikeouts. He got pulled a little early, maybe a little injury precaution, whatever it may be. Came back against the Royals, had a really solid start, right? Um, but you do got to remember the story with pretty much this entire Mariners rotation is that they struggle against lefties. And we haven't really been able to see that so far against Bryan Woo's, two opponents or with Bryan Woo's two opponents. Because when I'm looking at the Royals, all their scary bats are right-handed for the most part, outside of Vinny P, who strike out, stuff is always going to be there. But like Bobby Witt, scary bat. Salvador Perez has been great this season, scary bat from the right side. When you look at the lefties, they put Adam Frazier at the top, which, I mean, great. He got a single off of him in a second AB, but he's not a power guy. Michael Massey is about all you can do. MJ Melendez has been absolutely awful. They stuck Kyle Isbell at the bottom to try and take advantage of it. I mean, he sucks. So it's like you got that, and you go to what the A's threw out them, like Seth Brown, who's going to strike out a lot. Tyler Soderstrom, JJ Bleday. It's just like it's not much that scares me. So like I need a lineup of guys who, you have some scary guys from the left side of the plate, and maybe one of the scariest guys in all of baseball right now from the left side of the plate is Juan Soto. So there's more than one thing here too, because with Bryan Woo, I don't know if you can see it somewhere here, but I'll try and kind of pull it up, see what he does with his fastball, because he likes to keep Bryan Woo gets ahead in the count. Um, he's a great pitcher, but when you're going up against the Yankees lineup, who A is probably going to be pretty aggressive on that fastball in the zone early and often, I think that's going to be to Bryan Woo's demise. Or you throw the off speed, which he doesn't have command nearly as much with in early counts, and then you get behind in the count against a very patient lineup. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, if you're asking me, for Bryan Woo against this Yankees lineup. So um, as great as he's looked in these first two starts, I think he's benefited greatly from the couple of matchups that he's been, dealt with the Royals and the A's. Now you're getting to step up to the big leagues here at the Yankees, in Yankee Stadium, of course, too, where that fastball is probably due for a couple balls over that, short fence in right field. So that is probably my favorite angle here. The Yankees bats against Bryan Woo, which again is probably going to be a lower total game. Not quite sure where it's going to be, maybe an 8. So again, like if they blow up Bryan Woo, it can be just a couple of runs. I'm not sure where his pitch count's going to be, but I think he has a tough time against the Yankees, and I'll be fading him there. I don't have many thoughts on the back end of these series or this series with Bryce Miller, Nestor. I think Nestor pitches well. Bryce Miller, same deal. If he has trouble against the lefties, that's not going to be good. Luis Castillo, Luis Gil is, I mean, the strikeout stuff has looked absolutely fantastic. He's kind of figured out his command a little better. So I hate that he's coming off the start that he is, but I wouldn't hate a Luis Gil strikeout prop against the Mariners lineup, who provides plenty of them. So other than that, those are my thoughts. Another series that people wanted me to talk about was this Royals Tigers series, which we talked about a little on BTL, at least this first one with Olsen and Michael Wacha. Then we're going to see Casey Mize, Alec March, then probably one of the best pitching matchups we got so far this early season. Tariq Skubal against Cole Reagans, which Olsen Wacha, we can start with that game one. I do think Reese Olson's in for a little bit of a tough time. We see, looking on Prize Picks, you see the 2.5 earned run square. That, I mean, he's been absolutely nails lately. Why is that up? The Royals are at home where they've been so much better. So I do think they take advantage of him a little bit. Not sure how much, because I do still get the vibes of a relatively low scoring game in this one, a low lull coming from the offenses, whether it's, at the beginning of the game or maybe the last. Uh, so I do think he gets blown up, but I do think the bullpen's going to hold it down. The Tigers bullpen has been a little inconsistent as of late. So maybe this is a series where they kind of lock in, or at least a game where they lock in towards the end. But I do think Walker has a pretty solid start here against the Tigers. Really weird series for them in Arizona, where the bats looked alive. Javi Baez looked like Barry Bonds again. I don't think that's par for the course for this Tigers team. We're going to start to see the offense kind of level out, and the pitching staff, I guess, will level up. In terms of that, at least the bullpen will make itself more consistent. But game one, definitely in the Royals in a relatively low-scoring game. I do think there'll be like a splurge of offense, though, which is why I'm not taking the under. I think it's you get like a 4 or 5 run inning off of somebody, and then hopefully, that's from the Royals, but also hopefully the pitching staff levels out after that. But definitely struggling to the Royals in the total. I can talk about Casey Mize, though, in game two, because I guess another one of these angles that I had in the series last week was Casey Mize against the Marlins, who the Marlins had or still have the lowest ground ball rate in all of baseball against right-handed pitching. The Royals that's like a vastly different matchup for him. So not only do the Royals have an extremely low ground ball rate, which if you look at the entirety of the season, they sit 23rd. So I don't know, do the math, 8th lowest ground ball rate in all of baseball against right-handed pitching. They also hit the ball very hard, which if we're looking at what Casey Mize has done, and a lot of the reason why it's like some of his numbers point towards regression, it's because of this right here. 15th percentile hard hit rate. So like for the Marlins, I wasn't really all concerned about that because frankly, they hit the ball harder than you think, but a lot of it does not come from pitchers like this. But the Royals are right up there with them, and they're sitting right there at 12th in the league. I'm interested to see what they're sitting at in May because I feel like that might be a tick lower. Yeah, a tick lower. They haven't had like the best matchups, I guess, to do it, which sneakily this could be the one where they get right to do it. But ground ball rate is probably even lower. Yeah, they're sitting at the 4th lowest ground ball rate in the month of May, even though they've faced some pretty good ground ball pitchers as well. So for Casey Mize, I think he has a little bit of a tough time against the Royals in this matchup. Definitely wildly different from some of the ones he's had over the past couple of starts. And the Royals are at home, of course, where their bats have been significantly better. Now, I do have to say, I've been on this pedestal saying the Royals bats are pretty dead, and I think their insanity run is over, and I still kind of agree with that. But spot like this or series like this at home, I do think we see flashes where, they have a breakout game or two. Squad route is the Royals tonight in game one. So hopefully it's then. But if it's not, I do think game two is a pretty solid one to get it done. Then we can talk about Skubal versus Reagans as well. Really good pitching matchup. And to be honest with you, I have no problems leaning into a square under here. If we talk about the Royals, which I guess the Royals wouldn't be a bad pivot either because I do like the Royals. But I think both these pitchers are going to pitch well. I know the Royals at home against left-handed pitching have been fantastic. Their numbers have kind of tailed a bit against left-handed pitching just in total since the beginning of the season, which is one of the reasons why I kind of labeled it a insanity run. But they're sitting 20th, so like nothing special. Just below average in terms of the MLB against left-handed pitching. Better at home though, but if you look at who's even further below them, the Tigers sitting at 25th, which is a 79 WRC plus. So I do think they're going to have a really tough time against Cole Reagans. So I guess maybe the more I'm talking myself into it, it's more strongly a Royals in that game lean than a Tigers lean. So I'm not too, I don't know, I'm not too optimistic about the Tigers spots in this series. Now, I do think there's going to be one of these games that they steal, and I'm not really sure which one it's going to be. I still wouldn't be surprised if it's against like Alec Marsh, even though I do think Casey Mize is not going to pitch all that well. But there's a way for the Tigers to be competitive in this series. I don't think really any of these games is just going to be a straight blowout because I do think the Tigers can compete. We are staring at a pretty close series price for them. I think that third game has a chance to be a pitcher's duel, which would be close as well. But yeah, I do like the Royals a little bit in this series. Hopefully their bats come alive, but I think this will be a really good series to watch. Can talk about. I really don't have many thoughts on this Orioles Cardinals series, to be honest with you. Sonny Gray is a short favorite in game one. Orioles are facing a team who's sharp again. The Cardinals' bats have looked better. I'm not quite buying it just yet. Like I said, with the Red Sox series, when the Cardinals were involved in it, the Brian Bayo start kind of set the tone for that series, and he didn't give them, any depth. So the bullpen was overexposed, and they got some runs off of the bullpen, which it kind of opened the floodgates. So looked a little better. I'm not quite buying it yet. Still probably think it's the Cardinals being a favorite, maybe a little fatter favorite than they should against, Dean Kramer and the O's, but we've seen the story before. O's don't get line respect, especially on the road, and Dean Kramer's on the bomb. So overall, just out on this series, to be honest with you, because it feels like we're getting the Cardinals at a pretty high point here. And I'm not quite willing to buy. So keep me away from that series. For the most part, keep me away from this Angels Astros series as well. The Astros are starting to play much better, and I have no issue backing them. I do think, like, if I'm going to pick any of them, it's probably going to be game one against Reed Detmers, even though, like, you're probably selling him at his lowest point because he's been absolutely terrible as a recent. I think he's got 26 earned runs in his last 5 starts. Just got awful. And I'm not actually sure what the problem is. The Astros are a team who's really good against lefties, don't strike out against lefties. So in theory, like it's a really good matchup for them to continue playing as well as they have or hitting as well as they have. Definitely screams like a Kyle Tucker game, which again, riding the momentum of a guy who's been ridiculous over the past couple weeks. But yeah, it just feels like I'm going to be priced out of the Astros a lot in this series. So, I mean, I'm not going to lay big time juice or lay them by 2 in this series, especially at home. But at some point, like the Astros or the Angels, sorry, for like Reed Detmers it's got to snap back because the stuff's too good. Tyler Anderson's definitely due for some aggression. Griffin Koenig is a gas can in the series. So, like, overall, I think the Angels have picked up some wins against some teams that don't really want it, aka the Rangers over the weekend. I don't really want much to do with the series. It feels like I'm not going to get any lines that really entice me. So I'm good on that series for sure. Last series on here, Dodgers, Astros, or not Astros, Dodgers, D-backs, sorry. Uh, Another one where I have an angle game one that I like. I like the under in game one, which in this series we're going to get Slade Ciccone, Yamamoto game one. You're going to get Fott, Stone game two. You're going to get Nelson and Glasnow game three. I really like what the D-backs are doing in game one, which I have Ciccone down as a starter, which he essentially will be, but he's going to be coming in after Joe Mantiply as the opener. So he's going to be opening for a couple of reasons. One is going to be so you can face, the lefty platoon split of, Freddie and Shohei early in the game, make Slade go through that lineup or those guys at the very least one less time. But also Slade has been tough going through the lineup like a second time. If you were to go through the lineup one time, he'd be Cy Young. But the second he goes through it, another time, he's been really rough. Like you get around to that 4th inning, 5th inning ish, where he's going through the lineup for the second time, his ERA has jumped significantly. So now you're going to get that outing shortened. The second time he goes through the lineup, maybe he doesn't even see Freddie and Shohei for the second time in that lineup, which could be huge. So I do think that that's a really good pitching setup for them. If you talk about, like, it's not a bullpen game technically, but the Dodgers against bullpen games, there hasn't been too many of them, but they haven't looked good in those games. If you talk about what we saw last week, Brent Suter came out as the opener. Then, they saw Emilio Pagan, a couple other guys before Nick Martinez got the bulk start for the Reds. They scored 2 runs in those games. And that was the Reds using, their lefties to kind of platoon in the same way that the D-backs are using Joe Mantiply early today. So they were rough against that game. And then the Arizona actually did the same thing on April 30th, where they brought out a couple guys as openers. I forget who started that game, but it was a bullpen game with like a 3-inning bulk start. And, they scored 3 runs in that game. The Dodgers did and lost. So the Dodgers against bullpen games is definitely something I'm going to monitor because it does feel like if you find ways to stack against that lineup, you can be successful. For what it's worth, too, like Slade is a fastball heavy pitcher, but he also limits hard contact, which I can show you up here. The Dodgers have also struggled against those type of pitchers for what it's worth. Like he is up here. You would be surprised a guy like Slade Ciccone who throws his fastball almost 60% of the time. But when you go to like his hard hit rate, 75th percentile, barrel rate, just above average, 65th percentile. So he does a good job with that. If we're looking at metrics or you're looking at pitchers, you kind of compare for heavy fastball usage, but hard hit rate, Hunter Green up here, definitely better stuff, a little higher. He's been fantastic this season, by the way, but 85th percentile on both of those, just about the same fastball rate. What he did against the Dodgers, he just threw, 6 1/3 of really good baseball with 8 strikeouts. Another guy from a different side of the plate, but reminds me very similarly, metrics wise, Mackenzie Gore, a little higher barrel rate, but around same hard hit rates. Lefty, so a little different of a look, but over half fastball usage. And what did he do against the Dodgers? 6 innings of 1-run ball. So these type of guys, I think, are worth monitoring against the Dodgers. Helps that it's going to be a little short into the outing, maybe plays to his strengths. But yeah, I like this under in game 1. Yamamoto too, if we could talk about that side. I think a pitcher like Yamamoto, who gets hurt with a lot of ISO, a lot of power against the D-backs lineup, who hasn't really consistently been able to show that to me as of late. I'm not too concerned about him, putting up a stinker. Maybe a solo shot here and there, but not too much faith in this D-backs lineup right now. So that's a bulk of my thoughts here. Think we can go to the next set of series, which I don't love the back end of these series, partially because I don't know too much about these series just yet. To start with Padres Reds, I don't have any massive thoughts. The Reds' entire lineup is, hurt right now. You got more bullpen pitchers going on the IL, now injured. So it's tough to back anybody on the Reds right now unless you're backing Elly De La Cruz and or Tyler Stevenson, who's crushing the baseball right now. So like Michael King, I think he's going to absolutely shove, and that's probably a strikeout target, heavy strikeout target against the Reds. But he's going to give up a turkey or two, maybe to Tyler Stevenson if he's able to play. So I'll probably be on something there. But we don't know too much. You have Andrew Abbott going game 1, who he's lefty. I can check their updated numbers here, but the Padres have been pitiful, just absolutely pitiful against left-handed pitching. I'll just leave it on all year and see what the numbers exactly are. 21st, 88 WRC plus. We can bring it up to just include this month, see if anything's really changed. I guess they've been a little better, 93 WRC plus, but they face some bad lefties. So I don't anticipate Andrew Abbott having too bad of a start, which he's been great. So don't mind backing him in that start. Don't mind backing Michael King's strikeouts in the other start. And not much else for me in the series. Rangers Phillies next series here. The Rangers are moose, dude. The Rangers offense right now is pitiful to watch, especially against left-handed pitching. So I guess before I get into that, I do want to answer Phil's question because he commented something under the tweet, which I will put out a tweet before every episode just so you guys know, to kind of figure out what you guys want to hear, specific games, specific matchups. So make sure you tap in there when I tweet that out. Then I'll try and get to everybody's stuff. But Phil's, a lot of people are talking about the Phillies playing a really soft schedule. So maybe it's like a Mickey Mouse run that they're playing this good of baseball. So like, would the Rangers qualify as a team to kind of break that streak? 2-part answer, no, because the Rangers are absolutely terrible right now. Especially offensively. I mean, there's a train wreck. Everybody's giving the excuses for the Rangers that they're so injured and their whole pitching staff is hurt. But like, your pitching staff isn't the issue. Pitching staff's been all right. It's just the fact they can't hit. Corey Seager started to hit a little better, but he's been pitiful. Like, Adolis has been good in the spots, but he also, strikes out a ton. Simeon's been getting better. I guess the whole lineup's just been weird over the past couple weeks or so, really since they got swept by the Rockies. So no, I don't think they're a good team right now. And if that's the argument everybody wants to take, I don't think the Rangers are really breaking that mold, but I think the Phillies are legit. I don't think it's an accident. So as soft as the schedule has been, I don't think you watch this team and you're still impressed on a day-to-day basis. If you've watched Ranger Suarez pitch, who's going to be going game 1 against the Rangers, ironically enough, I mean, the guy's been lights out. And if we want to talk about another team that's even worse against left-handed pitching, the Rangers sitting right here at 23rd, 80 WRC plus. Like as bad as the Marlins have been against left-handed pitching, everybody knows that. Just a 1 WRC plus higher than them. Same with the Rockies. Same with, the White Sox are down here. Like, these are really bad offenses against left-handed pitching. The Rangers are just right in the middle of. And they've been terrible. And obviously that includes a little time in cores where they didn't do shit. So uh square, it may be. I don't know. They've been a little better, I guess you could say, like at home hitting against lefties, but Ranger Suarez has been so good. This just feels like a spot where he absolutely deals against this Rangers lineup. So I will be backing him. This game's tomorrow. But yeah, this is a spot that the way the Rangers are playing right now and hitting at the plate right now, I have no choice but to fade. Um, Rest of the series, not much interest from me, to be honest. Taiwan Walker could be in for maybe that's where the Rangers offense wakes up. Not really sure. Definitely don't want it to be against Zach Wheeler. But yeah, not much interest otherwise. But yeah, Rangers have been terrible against lefties. Good luck against Ranger Suarez. Next series up, another series that's really tough because we have Logan Webb, Martin Perez. We're going to get Blake Snell's return, which is tentative. This is not for sure, but this is just the projected starters that I'm seeing. Nothing's been confirmed yet, but he's looking to come back against Jared Jones, which that'll be a fun pitching matchup. And then Mason Black against potential Paul Skeens. A lot of pitching matchups in flux, like I said, but it seems like the Logan Webb's pretty in stone. I do think he can have a little bit of trouble against the Pirates, which really Pirates offense is god awful, but they're decently patient. And by that, I don't mean that they're taking a lot of walks necessarily. Um, but for Logan Webb, he kind of nibbles around the strike zone, kind of like Marcus Stroman does, and he tries to get really soft contact, and he is so successful in that, which is what makes him, amazing, just especially at home. And now you are getting Logan Webb on the road, which, as we've seen so far, is a massive difference. Um, and he's been bad, just flat out bad on the road. But we look at, for those who don't know what O swing is, it's right up here, swinging outside the strike zone. The Pirates strike out a lot, but when they swing outside the strike zone, they just don't hit it, which is why they're this low. So, like, they're not going to get a lot of soft contact. It's just going to be when they do put the ball in play. I think it's going to be hit hard and hopefully in spots where they're able to avoid the defense. So the defense always seems to be gold glovers when Logan Webb's on the mound, but those strike out a lot more of the time. So I think the strikeouts will be there for Logan Webb, but when they put the ball in play, I think they could cause problems for him. So maybe a sneaky, Logan Webb blow up. It's on the road, so I don't know how sneaky it is because he's been god awful on the road, but not much trust there. Not much trust for Blake Snell for kind of the same things. I don't know if I'm as confident to go against Blake Snell because it is a lefty, which I can see the Pirates' updated numbers as well against left-handed pitching. Gotten a little better, I guess, middle of the pack, so not awful, but same reason as Logan Webb, just kind of spun it differently because Blake Snell, you need guys to chase to get your strikeouts. He has a lot of stuff that he wants to pepper outside the zone, a lot of breaking balls below the zone. If you don't chase those, Blake Snell has to come at you in the strike zone, and that doesn't work too well for him early on this season. So now he's coming back from the injury. Maybe he's a little gassed up. So I'm not too sure about what Blake Snell is going to provide. So this is a weird series for me where I could see the Pirates being decently live here, especially like if they get one of these first two games. You're obviously going to have the pitching advantage with Mason Black versus Paul Skeens. So I don't believe we have the series prices up for the games that are starting on Tuesday or the series that are starting on Tuesday, but probably not the worst play on the Pirates, I would say. Can move over towards the end here. Cubs Braves, I really don't have anything just because we don't know too much about that series. We still have the Braves doubleheader going on now, so maybe pitching will be shuffled. The bullpen's definitely going to be in a pretty tough spot after that with no off day. So the Braves could be a little vulnerable in this spot, but don't know what I think there. This series here, Rockies A's as well. Don't really have all that much. I think Cal Quantrill, I'm down to keep riding what's working with Cal Quantrill and how well he's been pitching, especially against this A's lineup that I said in the before the Royals series. I feel like they're on the same trajectory, just a little later than the Royals were. I think their bats are really struggling. I think their bats are dead. They had their moments, and now they're starting to look like the A's at the plate again. So I would love to continue fading them. And I think it's a series in the Rockies, even though the Rockies bats might not do all that much or put up that much of a fight in Oakland. I do think this is could be a decent spot to back Cal Quantrill, which it's been a decent spot to back him really all season. Thankfully, I haven't lost too much money fading him, but now I might be willing to hop in against the A's bats just pretty consistently. So I think that's all we have for this week. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you stayed here this far, this was, I guess, the longest episode of the 3 that we've done. Definitely, I mean, the most interesting, I think, slate of series that we've done so far. So we got plenty of angles there. I'm super excited to watch these series this week. Good luck on all your bets. Again, I appreciate you tuning in to find some angles, and we'll be fleshing these out on BTL, throughout the week, in the next couple of days on a game-to-game basis. But now you know kind of where my head's at, and feel free to drop any nuggets of where your head's at, either down in the comments here or on Twitter. We'll be interacting with plenty of guys. So thanks for joining. We'll do this again probably on Friday. Good luck on your bets, and let's have a week.